Hello, it's Fred again from Notes of a Nomad, video number 293. 200 years ago, in September the 27th in 1825, apparently was the first time that there were passengers pulled by a steam engine. And this happened in England, and it was, I believe, on the Stockton to Darlington distance of, I'm not sure how many miles it was, 20, 30, 40 miles. And this is the first time that apparently a steam engine or an engine of any kind carried passengers. Now, I've had a few train trips in my lifetime, and I'm just thinking about them, trying to find some pictures. It really had a big challenge for me. Slowed down making this video, trying to find, if not the pictures that I had, some representative photos. And let me share with you some of my experiences of traveling by train in my lifetime, because it's been bringing back some fond memories. So let me share my screen. And this is the picture of the first train trip. Well, I'm not sure if this is exactly it. Maybe it's a reproduction of it, but it certainly the engine looks like it's pretty accurate. In 1825, carrying the passengers in England between Stockton and Darlington. And apparently they went up to 15 miles an hour, which was pretty scary, or about 24 kilometers an hour. And that was scared some of the passengers of being so fast. This is another picture that I did find of a engine. I believe this was in northern United States, not far from Thunder Bay, where I was born. And there I am standing in a front of a train engine. I'm I was on display, so it was probably a ancient engine, even in the 1950s or late 1940s, when we were traveling to probably Duluth, Minnesota. And that was a picture of me standing in front of it. I had another picture that I cannot find of me standing in front of a large engine like this. In fact, I think the engine might even been larger. There were some very large steam engines in the United States, and they were busy and active in those days. And I had a picture of me standing in front of this enormous engine as well. Couldn't find that, but I found this, which represents it. It might have even been bigger than this one. But it was a very large locomotive. I remember that one as well. I was young, hadn't traveled on any trains, and I never traveled very much in trains at all in Canada, um, except I believe in 1958 or 59. Friend of mine and my father, we went up on the Pacific Great Eastern Railway, which was from Vancouver to near Squamish. The railway went from Vancouver up to Prince George in British Columbia. And we traveled up to around Squamish, and we then walked along the railway line for about a week. And this was the Bud cars. It says BC Rail, but in those days, these Bud cars, which are self-propelled diesel-powered engines, but there's no engine. It was a passenger car with its own power. And these Bud cars were quite popular to a certain extent in North America. And this was in around the 1950s. And this was an example of one in British Columbia. And we traveled around 1958, 59 when we walked along the railway line to Darcy. This picture I took because I remembered last year when I was traveling around British Columbia, I went up to the Arctic. I thought, oh, I can go to Darcy on one of the dirt roads. And I took this picture seeing the sign because we walked up to Darcy and we walked on the railway tracks for about a week, the three of us, Dave, myself, and my father. And that's what the railway lines look like. It still look like that today because that was last year that I took this picture. Now, in 1962, Ken, my friend who owns the boat that I often go on, him and I were traveling around Europe. The only time I remember going on a train was going up a very steep incline train up to Kandersteg in Switzerland. It was a steep incline, and we had a ticket to go up the mountain on an incline train. But that was the only time I recall going on the train until 1963, when I was hitchhiking and traveling through Africa on my way from Cairo to South Africa. And this is an example, unfortunately, but it's representative of the train in Africa, in northern Sudan. We took a train, I believe, from Wadi Halfa to Khartoum in Sudan. And it looked like this. This was an overnight train trip, very crowded, very interesting. I could tell you stories about traveling on the train. There was no place to sleep. I was trying to sleep in the aisle, and people were actually walking over us because there was no actually no place to sleep, and I was tired. But anyway, that was in 1963. I did take a train trip from northern Sudan to Khartoum. And that's representative of that train. I found that picture on the internet. And then when we come to other trains, I worked on the gold mines for many years. And in the 1970s, I worked on Grootvlei proprietary mines. That's what this stands for. Grootvlei proprietary mines. It was a gold mine. I was an underground manager there, and we had the engine like this with the ore cars. We would lift the ore from underground on the different shafts. We had six shaft and three, four shaft and three shaft. And the train would collect the ore from six shaft and four shaft and take it to the number three shaft where the reduction works, where the gold would be removed. And this engine, for years, was doing this job. There was a couple engines, and this was representative of the engine on Grootvlei proprietary mines. And there was a good old steam engine, worked for years, and that was in the late 70s when I worked on Grootvlei proprietary mines. So that was my other exposure to engines. Now, I don't think I traveled on the train until this time in 2012 when my daughter Alexis, who was 20, and I was 70, in 2012, we were in South Africa and we took the Blue Train, which is a luxurious train. Look up if you're interested in how luxurious the Blue Train is. We took the train from Pretoria to Pretoria is up here on this map. It doesn't show very clearly. Pretoria is in the Transvaal. It's about 1,600 kilometers going through Kimberley and DR, and then down to Cape Town, Worcester, and then Cape Town. And that's an 18-hour trip, I believe. We slept overnight. It was very luxurious. In fact, when we were in the example, this is what the Blue Train looks like from, and it had the dining car. We had to be formally dressed. I had to have a tie and a jacket, and Alexis had to have a fancy dress to eat in the dining car. And it was very luxurious, nice beds, nice with washrooms, you know, a very expensive trip, but once in a lifetime. We took the Blue Train. And last but not least, my exposure was in 2014. I took a train from South China to Hong Kong, and it looked something like this. And this was in China. And as you probably know, today, Chinese have even faster trains. I think it goes up to 400 kilometers an hour in some cases, at least 300. And around the world, you have fast trains like in not only in China, but Japan, the bullet trains, and also in Europe, I think in France and Germany as well. So trains have changed enormously in the past 200 years since the people were scared traveling at 24 kilometers an hour on the Darlington to or Stockton to Darlington train in 1825, 200 years ago. So those are some of my thoughts. It's been a nice reminder of, oh, where have I taken trains? A little bit in Europe, a little bit in Canada, a little bit in Africa, The blue train was been the highlight, the most expensive and luxurious train trip we took. And that's been my exposure. But train travel is still going on. Now it's going hundreds of kilometers an hour. So with that, I would say, wonder what your trips have been. What's your thoughts about traveling on trains and your experiences? Those are mine. So with that, say adios, au revoir, wishing you, your family and friends, lots of love and laughter. Bye for now from Fred. Till next time, and Notes of a Nomad.